record.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Me and Dusty just hopped right into it. Go ahead.
Yeah, my bad. Anyways, I was training at Strong Style. I went to the Dante Leon seminar and just so happened to just recognize a face, and that face was you interacting with Stipe at the time, getting ready for his fight with John. So I just think it's kind of ironic that now we're here a couple weeks later after the fact of that moment. So I thought that was pretty cool when they reached out to me and they're like, hey, we're going to do a podcast with so and so. I'm like, all right, who's this guy? And I go look at your page. I'm like, huh, I've seen this guy already. So,
all right. Right place, right time. I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Man, I'm not gonna start as a short memory. So let's just stay on jiu-jitsu, Saw you're a purple belt, saw that in your bio, saw some pictures, saw you're a purple belt, saw you on the podium in first place in a gi. You don't see that too often with MMA guys. So, tell me a little bit about jiu-jitsu and what how that works, how you got into jiu-jitsu, like what was that space like for you and where you're at today with it?
So jiu-jitsu for me, that was I was a lifetime wrestler, which I'm sure you saw. And wrestling and jiu-jitsu are very, very close related, obviously, as you know. So like that was always something that I was kind of fascinated by growing up. And it was it took me a couple years to like get on the right track in my life in general. I was doing other things that just, weren't leading me in the right direction. And I'll get into that. But jiu-jitsu is my passion. Like fighting is too, but like jiu-jitsu is like my core passion. Grappling in general, I would say. Like when I'm watching fights, I'm very fascinated by striking, and don't get me wrong, like striking is also a passion of mine, but I have a much deeper passion towards grappling. So like when I'm watching fights at the highest level, say like UFC fights, one championship, whatever, I enjoy the striking aspect, but when they go to the ground, I'm all in. Like for example, this past weekend, UFC 311, I think it was, with Bryce Mitchell and Kron Gracie, just those moments where Kron started to actually attack him versus just kind of do whatever Kron does. That was very interesting to watch.
Yeah. Let me ask you real quick. With your love of jiu-jitsu, which what Kron was doing was crazy, is there any part of you that's like, I do some stuff like that?
Oh, 100%. That's why I was so intrigued by it and so interested. And I'm sitting there on the couch. I'm just like, you're not in a good spot right now, Bryce. Like his style it's similar to mine in a sense. I'm much more aggressive than Kron, I would say. He just doesn't strike for whatever reason. He doesn't try to attack his opponents. I don't really understand that. I'm not sure what's going on with him, but his style, definitely the way that he was able to just kind of navigate within with Bryce being on top of him and navigate kind of around his body and then work towards submissions like he did. Yeah, I mean, like I'm the type of grappler where like I'll just make things happen. I'll find a way to get to certain positions that allow me to then apply pressure to a limb or a neck, so be it, whatever comes my way, really.
Nice. All right, so let's go hyper fantasy world. Not hyper fantasy, it could happen. You're fighting crime. What's the game plan? You're not pulling guard on this man.
No, I'm not. I'm not pulling. Well, you know what? Honestly, I wouldn't mind pulling guard on him because, like, for me, like, though I was a wrestler, I'm more of like I lean towards being on the ground actually. Like that's my safe space is being on the ground, fighting from my back, fighting from my butt. It's like I am able to sweep and find positions that are very advantageous to me from the ground more so than stand up. Like takedowns are fun and all, but not really my strong suit, honestly. I can wholeheartedly say that. It's like I can do them and I understand them, but like I would much rather, sit down and let you come to me.
You weren't a
So,
bully wrestler. You weren't a
no,
bully wrestler.
absolutely not.
Were you like a Funk Ben Askren kind of guy? Like
Yes,
sitting
I'm
down
a
spladling people?
yep,
Yeah.
very funky. I'm a scramble wrestler.
Okay.
Ben Askren is a good way to
Okay.
describe it too, because he definitely is one of those types of guys that just funk master, he loves just moving very awkwardly, funky, just kind of go with
Yeah.
the flow. Like that's the best way I could describe my fighting style in general is
Yeah.
I'm a flow artist.
hmm It's interesting. I think of I think of flow as like for me, I've always more operated in almost a cadence pop, pop, pop way of flow, like strength power, combos, things like that. Like judo roll into something and attack. Like I'm good at like moving things and like doing that, being athletic and doing something fast.
Hmm.
So for me, that's like my flow when I can find combos and rhythm. But like for jujitsu, like my thing is like, bro, I got to keep you still. You got to stop moving. Like I roll at a pretty casual jujitsu, not casual jujitsu gym, but not a fight gym. Called Easton VJJ here in Arvada. My buddy John, he's a blue belt. John probably no more than 165 pounds. I'm like, bro, dog, don't be moving around too much today.
Yeah.
He's like, I have
Um,
to. You squash me.
the way that you're explaining John, that would be me. I'm the guy that moves around a lot. I can hold positions if I need to, especially if I'm, in a position where I can kind of apply some pressure on you and maybe like cut off some of the oxygen. But for the most part, I'm moving all the time. Don't stop moving. That's like something that I really think helps elevate my jujitsu game the way it does.
Mhm. I also think with that style, you're pushing the pace more on a regular than more than most MMA athletes because I don't think they go as deep into jujitsu. So that like you get more reps and more awkward positions. And sometimes I think for some people who don't maybe train in that same way, they don't see that till fight time. That level of chaos, which is
Yep.
I think you have more reps and rounds in that space.
Yeah, man, I do it, and you're right. And I do a lot of like flow rolling.
Mhm.
I'm not trying to, especially if somebody is less skilled than me, like I'll kind of let them get to, good positions on me and just move
Mhm.
around a lot while getting there to not only, allow them to kind of work, but then also just give me the opportunity to work out of any position from anywhere. So I try to really, really be on that when I'm rolling with anyone really is if we're not going hard, or just kind of like especially open mats, it's like I'll roll with guys just free roll, kind of like not it's like a loose type of hold that you'll have upon them. And then, if you
Mhm.
have a good partner, they get that as well. And it creates that flow, which is it's I think the most fun way to do it. I also feel like I learn the most from it too.
Yeah. Well, you're in the environment now. You know what I mean? And it's like you're absorbing fast. I don't know how you exactly learn if it's visual, if it's feel, but you're getting more responses and reps and more immersion in those spaces. Kudos to you for
Right.
that. That's a hard space for people to be in, whether it's jiu-jitsu, cardio. So for some guys, it's striking in a way to stay in a space for a certain amount of time, and like that's where the mastery comes to. And I think going back to Kron, I think where he's at is like he's Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but he's in stoic samurai mode, and he's like, we're just doing jiu-jitsu and that's it. And it's
Right.
like I think it's him just testing the art to be like, can I just? It's a different way when you see like the McDojo page and you see a guy trying to fight an
Yeah.
MMA guy.
Yeah.
It's like a slightly elevated version of that guy being
Yeah.
like, oh no, it's gonna be fine. It's like an
Yeah.
elevated version of that. Be like strictly jits.
Yeah, I kind of get that vibe for sure. And like going back to, his father, his whole family, really. I mean, like that's kind of the way that they would go about their fights is to just show that, like, they could go against a guy any size and be able to control them, even. while they are trying to attack them with strikes, they can maintain a proper, like a good position and be able to, finish them without even really throwing strikes. So I think Crone is trying to still, I think you're right, where he's still trying to like showcase
Mhm.
that, but it's just like now the levels have changed. The game isn't the
Yeah,
same anymore.
right. Yeah, you're driving 45 and a 75. So,
Yeah, yep, definitely.
all right.
Yeah.
So let's
I
go back. Go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just gonna go into just a little more jujitsu. As you probably know, I train at True Art Jiu-Jitsu under Shannon White, and I actually was just talking to him right before this. He had
Nice.
mentioned that you actually had helped him get one of his first wrestling sponsors, I think it was, and that you guys have actually known each other for quite a while. So that was pretty cool to
Yeah,
me too.
that's crazy. Yes, I've known Shannon a long time. It's funny in a full circle way. I appreciate you bringing that up. I met Shannon at East Coast Karate, which is like
Yep,
a school, like Canton Canal, Fulton area.
yep, I've
My
been.
friend, you been there? Okay, so you know
Yep,
Chad.
yep.
Yeah, yeah. Chad's a long time homie too. Chad's a long time. One of our favorite pictures is a picture of me, Chad, and Jessica I at a car dealership, Haas Auto Mall, which used to sponsor me. Um, and one of my memories with Shannon is meeting them there. And it's funny about the sponsorship. I remember, like, bro, I don't even remember that.
Yeah,
But that thing, it warms my heart, you know.
yeah.
It's awesome.
I think it definitely meant a lot to him. That was like the first thing that he mentioned as soon as I mentioned your name. So yeah,
Bro, I
he had
appreciate
nothing but
that. And
good
I don't
things to
know.
say.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. I'm a person who's always been like a team guy, a connect, chat, build relationships guy. What are you doing? How can I help facilitate that? If your energy's on point, how can I help facilitate that? Um, yeah, man. So I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. Very affirming.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. All right. So let's rewind back. We talked about longtime wrestler, lifetime wrestler, and it's like mind boggling. Like, so you've been doing the loosey goosey funk the whole time. Tell me, like, whenever I see youth wrestlers, I feel like they're out there and they do like the Frankenstein pull and it's real stiff and things like that. But as a funk guy, like, tell me about your upbringing, growing up wrestling, and just kind of that journey into MMA.
So I mean, I wasn't ever like, especially when I started, I can hardly recall those days, honestly, but I just know that I was getting my ass beat for a while. Like I really was. I
Mhm.
wasn't really the best grappler or athlete for a long time, and I didn't really have a lot of guidance either. I don't
Mhm.
even fully remember how I even got into wrestling. So
Okay.
like that was kind of like it's kind of a dark area for me. I know I had
Yeah.
a friend. I remember talking about it recently. I had a friend at the time who was involved with it, and I think that might have been part of the reason why. And that was when I was 8 years old. So
Mhm.
throughout my youth days, I was always nitty gritty, always aggressive, and would never stop fighting regardless of who the opponent was and how I was doing. I could be down 15 points and I'm still not giving up. Like it's just heart that I have inside of me, So my youth days they were good, not my highest point. I would say middle school days when I started to excel a little bit. I finally so like another issue with like the youth days was our program was terrible. We would have coaches that just didn't care. That's kind of how a lot of youth programs are, just because they don't really get paid. So they're just, yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna do this today. Or it's not really gonna benefit you, but we're gonna do it anyway. Type. And so that was just like the start. But then moving to middle school, I then finally got under some coaches that actually cared, and started pushing me. And that's
Mhm.
what started to ignite that true, wrestler fighting like fire that I had inside of me. And it was actually leading up to like I started excelling. I started doing well. Eighth grade year came around, did pretty solid, made it to districts, then it was after that year actually where I don't know what it was in my head, but something told me I didn't want to wrestle anymore, pretty much. So
What
it was
grade is
like
this now?
that was eighth grade, so middle school,
Okay.
end of middle school, getting ready to
Mhm.
go to high school, and like they see the potential. My coaches saw the potential, and they're all like trying to hype me up for high school level wrestling and introducing me to the coach and this and that. And the whole time I'm just like, I don't think I'm gonna wrestle. So I finished out my eighth grade year. I went to then go to high school,
Mhm.
and I played football that year. I only played football for my freshman and sophomore year.
Okay.
So playing football, it had me in the gym, working out. And while I was working out, this is a little later in the season where the wrestling open mats were starting. And
Mhm.
this was all in the same area.
Mhm.
When I saw that, it just it completely threw that thought out of my head of quitting wrestling. I just knew deep down that that was not the right thing to do. That like I could never. Why would I quit now when I've already made it this far? And one thing led to another. Next thing you know, I'm rolling with the guys at Open Mat, and then I was fully locked in at that point. It just like
Mhm.
it was almost like I lost the love for the sport, and then just that turnaround to that Open Mat really reignited, and not only reignited the love, but
Mhm.
ignited it to another level. So it was then where I fully committed to it. And the first year of my freshman year, I actually didn't even make varsity. I had a couple of seniors ahead of me that were, in all three of the weight classes that I could potentially wrestle at. So I was just kind of screwed there.
Mhm.
They were all pretty good, I would say. By the time I was a senior, I'd say I'd be able to beat the majority of them.
Mhm.
But at the time, being young, it didn't work out in my favor. So I spent pretty much that entire season wrestling JV. Had a very successful season, and then come following year, obviously those seniors had graduated, so that's when I finally had my opportunity to not only make the varsity lineup, but then start actually really putting my mind to it and starting to win. And I,
Mhm.
I would say I had like a 50-50 season that year, first year varsity as a sophomore year. It was also that year where I decided, football just was not the right sport. And
Mhm.
I had taken a knee injury as well. It was like a partially torn meniscus, which kind of almost jeopardized my season. So that was the nail in the coffin for football. And it was at that point where I fully committed from going from sophomore to junior year. Once, and I also played lacrosse too, so like that kind of took up my spare
Okay.
time. But once that season ended and summer hit, where like typically you would start football training,
Mhm.
that's actually when I started wrestling training and
Okay.
decided, to go into wrestling throughout the summer and
Yeah.
trying to get as much experience in as I could before the season started. And when I made that choice, that's when the game really changed for me because I started to really excel. That's like sophomore year, I made it to districts. Junior year, districts again. Senior year, I think it was like 38 and 6 or 7 overall for the year leading up to districts. And then took sectionals that year. I had placed second in my area sectionals, I guess you could say.
There you go.
The
Sectional
guy who
district
I
state.
lost
Yeah.
to, yeah, and then the guy who I actually lost to in the finals, I was able to actually come around and beat then that year in districts in like the second round. Then made it to, I believe it was quarterfinals that year, lost there, went down to consolations, then fought all the way to the blood round to make it 2 states. And it was in that match where I was up by 2, got reversed, so it was tied. Then he got some points somewhere where I didn't fully understand. It was kind of like a shaky call. But in the process of all of that happening, I was defending a takedown. I was doing sort of like that split stance type of defense, and it was my knee actually was in a awkward position, and then it buckled into the floor. And at that point, I feel the pop, so I'm like, oh shit, That stops for a sec. They're like, the doctors come out. They're like, yeah, we're pretty sure you tore your ACL. When they told me that, it was kind of funny because I was like, you know what, screw this. My knee doesn't hurt. I'm good. I'm good. And I got up and actually finished that match, and almost came back to beat him with a bummed knee. To obviously, I was trying to make it to states, but even if I did make it, I wouldn't have been able to wrestle. It was done after that. So lost that match by a point with a takedown at the end that should have scored me 2 points to win, but that was the cap to my wrestling season that year and just my wrestling career in general.
All right. So that happens. That's often a shift in like what we're doing, identity. So what was the process like from that career ending to like getting to jiu-jitsu and MMA? And like I'm guessing as what you shared earlier about some youth things. I'm guessing things weren't great after the knee injury.
Yeah. I had to so I missed a portion of, like, after that ended, I was also planning to play lacrosse again that year. I had to miss like 3 or 4 weeks of that season because of the knee injury. I was on crutches for like 6 weeks right after the initial injury, and then it was another like 4 weeks of uh, physical therapy to get me back to a state where I could run, where I could move and be agile. And the pain slowly faded away. The injury I was able to recover from. Fortunately, it wasn't a full tear; it was only a partial tear, which was able to recover on its own. So I was very fortunate there. But so graduated high school. The second I graduated high school, I actually so this is like kind of a time where I started getting into like partying and just not doing good things. I ended up actually, like, this is just kind of something that doesn't really tie into martial arts, but I just gotten into like some legal trouble essentially. I think because of that legal trouble, it just kind of like set me in a course of life to where I was set behind, pretty much was the best way I could put it. Like, right out the gate, as soon as I turned 18, I was already set up for failure pretty much. So it was 2015 when I graduated. So for about 4 years after that, I just went off the deep end pretty much. I moved out to Kent, actually. I planned to go to school there. I also even considered joining. So before I get there, actually, I was supposed to wrestle at. I had Mount Union and Baltimore Wallace both reaching out to me to wrestle for them. But me being young and just an idiot, I decided I wanted to go to Kent because Kent is where the party's at.
Yeah, it's my hometown.
yeah. So So I did that. I had thoughts of actually joining the wrestling team out there and trying to walk on, but I just time kind of got away from me. I also was living on my own, so I had to work, and it just wasn't the best route for me to take at the time, unfortunately. So, about 4 years passed, I'm partying, doing this and that. That led me to then, it was 2018. So this is actually what led me into martial arts. I was actually at a friend's house, and we were in Kent. We had partied all night, you know. One thing led to another. My friend was kind of being disrespectful to me. Not kind of, actually, being very disrespectful to me. And we actually ended up getting into a physical fight. Okay. So that then led me to leaving the house that I was at. And obviously, you know how Kent is, especially not only late at night, but this was like very early in the morning. So it was like probably like 5:45, 6-ish a.m. where I'm driving up Route 43 up there, which I'm sure you know, and end up getting pulled over by Ohio State Highway Patrol, and they pulled me out of the car, gave me a sobriety test, said I failed, made me blow, gave me an OVI.
Yeah.
So that OVI then led me to Portage County Jail, where I had to spend 10 days there. It was while I was in, I, you know, obviously had time to think about what I was doing with my life. It was towards the end where I remember, and quick side note, really quick, there was a buddy of mine who, not only a buddy, but I would say a brother of mine, who months before this, even like a year before this, I've been like trying to get me into the gym with him. And that was an MMA gym. He had already been training MMA. He had already been fighting as well. And he just always been in my ear, like every so often. So back to being in jail, I was watching the TV in the hub area, and it just so happened that Cage Fights MMA was on the TV. So I'm sitting there watching that, you know, and that then I can remember very specifically was the moment where I then had the light bulb go on in my head. Where I'm like, all right, I know exactly what I got to do as soon as I get out of here. And this was in December of 2018. So this is towards the end of the year, you know. I get out, and this was towards the end of December too. It was like right around New Year's. I get out, and then it was maybe a week later is when I reached out to my buddy, which his name is Devin Rhodes. He's actually very high level fighter, and a lot of people really underestimate his true skill set, and he's actually getting ready to make his return, which I'm very excited for. But I reached out to him, got into the gym within like a week of getting out, and that's really what initially kicked off me going into a martial arts career. So,
well, you're early in the career, so like, all right, you hopped into it. Tell us a little bit about amateur days, and then we're going to talk about coming off a decision loss, and then choosing to take this fight with Tony, who's a vet. You know, which I'm curious about that. So, going back to like, we're in the martial arts space now. We're making that transition. How long to your first amateur fight?
So this was in 2019. I trained with that specific gym for about 6 months. And in those 6 months, I figured out that the gym that I was at was not the right gym. Okay? They were not training properly. I knew that if I wanted to reach the level that I wanted to reach, then I had to go elsewhere. So it was after those 6 months where I ended up leaving. Right around that time, this was in August of 2019. You know, fast forward about 4 more months, and well, actually, I shouldn't say 4 more. Let me add another 3. So about like 7 months of like layoff there, which led us into 2020. And then, you know, obviously March of 2020 is when COVID and the whole shutdown happened. So fast forward from March to about, it was like April, May, you know, I was really itching to get back into the gym. No gyms were open at the time, though, or at least as far as I knew. So what I decided to do actually at the time was reach out to some of my past teammates who I trained with including Devin, and guys like Deontay Childers and Richard Gibson and a couple other guys. And we actually all congregated at a park in Akron. It's called Big Bend. It's a park within Sand Run. That's like there's trails there, so you could like run, and there was a big open grass field. So what we would do is meet at that field. We might like get some running in or a little warm up, whatever, and then we would bring all of our gear, and we would just spar right there in the grass because we had nowhere else to go. You know. So after that, I'm talking with some of the guys there, and then they mentioned a couple of gyms that were, I guess you could say, like privately owned. So they were open, even though they weren't supposed to be, but because it's private business, they could do what they want. So that's when I learned about it was the Upgrade Industries days. Those were some really unique days because
Upgrade Industries. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar.
Upgraded Industries, I should say. They're out of it's up in Menor area. So it's a pretty sweet gym. DJ Jacobucci is the owner of it, and what they would do every Sunday is put on a group spar for anyone that was, knowledgeable of that specific spot. And it would attract, anywhere from 10 to 30 guys sometimes. It would be at the point to where like we would have an entire octagon just completely full of sparring going on. And there's a lot of guys there that I hope watch this interview and will remember those days and just how unique it was. And
cool.
I made a lot of connections there. That's when I first started making connections in the MMA community that helped lead me to other gyms, which then would become my eventual home gyms. And it was then I learned about Apex Fight Systems. Apex Fight Systems was in Akron, which was a lot closer to me. So I then started training there a little bit. I'd get sparring there. Devin also was still with me at the time. He started hitting mitts with me, just kind of like trying to form a little bit of a game. And then it was there at Apex Fight Systems where I met Josh Roller. And Josh Roller, so he already was a well-established professional fighter, also a very high-level wrestler, wrestled for Penn State. He's a dog. And he's the one that recommended me to his jiu-jitsu spot, which was True Art Jiu-Jitsu. And I had no idea about it. Well, let me actually circle back. I had a little bit of an idea about it because I had this girl that I knew had mentioned her boyfriend does jiu-jitsu. I was like, oh, where? And she also mentioned True Art. So that was like the first time I had heard about it. And then talking to Josh just sold me on, going to actually check out this gym because I was like kind of on the fence about it. And he's the one that really convinced me. So I go and check out True Art. And the first time I went, it was like an open mat. I showed up and I'm wearing this purple belt with a black stripe. It wasn't an actual legit belt, but like the last gym that I was at gave it to me so I could compete at this tournament in Orlando, which is kind of a shaky, little sketchy to do, But yeah, I know that Shannon, when he saw that, he definitely got a kick out of it.
What is this thing?
Yeah. And I rolled it with a purple belt there, and he just had his way with me. And because of that, that's how I knew I was at the right spot. Like if they're able to just like do whatever they want to me, that's when I knew, because I kind of had that same experience with that previous gym that I was talking about that just wasn't the gym. When I went down to Orlando, I trained at Fusion Excel. And that was also where I had a similar experience where I'm rolling with guys that are the same belt as me, and they were just destroying me. So I was like, all right, something's not right here. So
I've had those experiences.
So that was in September of 20 2020, I believe. Yeah, September of 2020 is when I first discovered True Art, and it's
Okay.
Shannon White. When I got there, I was training 6 days a week. That's how many days they have. That's how many days I was there. Some days I
Okay.
would go twice a day. You know, so I was kind of playing the catch up game. I wanted to just like acquire as much skill as possible in the shortest amount of time possible. So it was shortly after that, Devin, who was still training with me on occasion at other gyms, had mentioned that he had found this new MIG coach. And he was just saying, like, yeah, this MIG coach, he's like teaching me things that I never really thought of before, but they make so much sense. And he's like a very knowledgeable guy. You should come check him out. So I ended up going to check him out with Devin out in North Olmsted. It was at a gym called Powers Martial Arts.
Okay.
And that then is where I met Derek Tranchito. And Derek he's something else, man. There's something, so like the unique thing about Derek and Shannon both is that they not only like are very passionate, but they live for their art, which
Mhm.
for Shannon is jiu-jitsu specifically, and then for Derek is Muay Thai striking, which I had never really like. I had experience with striking, but not really specifically Muay Thai.
Okay.
So it was at that point, that was around like October, November-ish of 2020 as well.
Mhm.
So by that time, I knew that I had both of the coaches that I really needed to, go forward with actually trying to find a fight, an MMA fight eventually after the right amount of training. I didn't want to
Yeah.
rush anything.
Right.
So I took my time with it. I made sure that I was prepared. I didn't want to go in and just embarrass myself pretty much. So, like I said, that was October of 2020, November-ish is where I finally had found my two coaches. So then about October, so November, December, January, February, March, April, May. So that was 6 months after that. That is when it was May of 2021. I took my first amateur fight.
All right. All right. So 3 amateur fights, correct?
I had 7 amateur fights total.
An amateur fight. Okay.
Yep.
I looked on Sheer Dog. Is your most records on mixedmartialarts.com?
It would Tapology would show. I don't know if
Apology.
Sheerdog. I have 3 professional fights, so maybe they're just only showing my pro fights.
Yeah. Okay. All right. No worries. All right. So we're in the pro ranks now. Coming off I'm not a person who likes to focus on things. So I'm going to bring this up. This is something we had to go into. So coming off a decision loss, I didn't see the full fight. I saw a bit of a clip. Something. Oh yeah. Now jumping back to that, it's interesting that you're like a jiu-jitsu guy. You fight at a pace. You fight at a pace, and like I think we've been talking a lot about jiu-jitsu, but I think that's you're a good striker. You're a good striker as well. And I was yeah. So I just thought about jiu-jitsu. I was like, I've only seen you up top.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. So striking for me, like I said, like jujitsu is my passion. Jujitsu is like the deeper passion I have, but I also have a passion for striking. But like jujitsu is where I feel the most comfortable. Striking is where I'm essentially the journeyman.
Mm-hmm,
That's
mm-hmm.
where like I knew that I didn't have any prior experience. So for me, that's why I really like to test myself.
Okay.
When it comes to jujitsu, that's just like I know what I'm doing there.
Mm-hmm.
But striking, not so much. So especially when I fight, I try to like I like standing and banging, I like to brawl a little bit. I've always been that way, and so when I fight, I try to keep things interesting and I like to challenge myself and I will strike with obviously when you're talking about that last fight, some of
Mm-hmm.
the highest level of striking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And obviously that's something that is gonna just put a lot of attention to the fight. It'll have eyes on the fight. Not
Mm-hmm.
everyone understands jujitsu,
Yeah.
so it kind of like bores common people, but Striking doesn't. So that's
Yeah.
like something I always have in the back of my mind when I go into a fight is like, I don't want to have a boring fight.
Right on. So that's, well, I'm glad you said that. So we're going to use this opportunity to chat. I got a lot of friends, network, and community I'm inviting to your fight at this upcoming thing. Let's tell them what would. So I got some common folk that I would like to attend. We'll say that, who aren't huge MMA fans. What type of information would if you had to pitch someone new to come get a ticket? What would you say to them about the art of mixed martial arts, and then also your fight and what they're going to see in particular?
So what they're going to see in particular for my fights is, I would say it's you're going to see violence. I mean, like that's the best way I could describe it. Um, it's going to be exciting. That's like if I'm just explaining it to anyone, like it's excitement, it's violence, and it's going to be, very high level, high pace type of fight where like there's not really going to be dull moments. You're going to be entertained the entire time. And that's usually what I explain to people. And for the most part, everyone has agreed with me up until this point. So it's that's I guess the best way I could describe that.
I like you told them off top, like, listen, it's going to be violent. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate
I
that.
will say,
That's what
like,
we're here for.
yeah, watching guys like Justin Gaethje or like guys that just brawl, like I'll just, for him, for example, like who doesn't like watching a Justin Gaethje fight? And he was a wrestler, so like obviously striking isn't his strong suit, though he is good. He's very good at it, and he chooses not to wrestle. Very similarly to myself.
Yeah.
So
he's coming for your head.
Yeah.
That's dope. Okay, so jump into this fight. Let's talk about training. Let's talk about your training and preparation. I caught on your live the other day. You're soaking in the ice. I'm a big fan of ice baths as well. Something I'd always do around my weight cut times, especially after recovering and things like that. Do it now in the sense of like I've been training a lot, doing a lot of grappling over the last couple of years. I got back into strength and conditioning, training at this place called Arsenal Health and Fitness here in Colorado. And I got to get in there. I told my guy Jerry the other day, I said, look, the tub was down. We got to fix it, Jerry.
Yeah.
And
I saw
so
that actually.
Okay, appreciate it. See, Jerry, fix the tub, Jerry.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about this training camp and then some of your I'll say systems and processes. I heard you coaching someone who was newer in the tub during your live, having them focus on your breath, things like that. And they there's different levels. There's different levels of ice tubs. You know what I mean? Like there's ice. Some people have the tubes and the machines. Friends of mine go to this place called Portal up in Boulder, which is like a 200+ degree sauna steam that then goes to like there's 3 levels of water of like temperature, that people can pick from. So like not everyone's icing, but I'll let you go into it.
So I would say the preparation for this fight or I like the theme of it is it's to be smart, smarter than I was in my last fight, the fight that you were mentioning, where like when I came into that fight, I was very amped up. I was very ready to go. And I feel like because of that, I was a bit too aggressive, which actually came back to do harm to me. So a lot of this camp has been focused on settling down a little bit and just being a little more calculated with everything that I do, being a little more patient, and like even watching, because I've been watching a lot of high level fights recently and just like kind of taking notice on how those guys will trade off with each other. It's like it's a lot of back and forth. So like for me, I'm trying to wait for those right moments to apply my attacks versus just going after it, because if you just go after it, that actually can, like I said, it could set you up to actually get messed up, and I had that happen to me. So it's like that's been a huge thought in my head now, is like, just settle down a little bit, be patient, take your time, and find those right moments to attack. Find the right, choose the right moments to either strike or kick, or then, apply like a clinch, shoot a takedown. And awareness is like, the main focus. So I also, this is just a daily thing, whether I'm in fight camp or not, primarily to strengthen my mind. A lot of what I do is about, just taking my mind, like your mind in general, anyone's mind, there's a part of it that tells you not to do things. So when that part of your brain is telling me not to do something, I will do it. And there's a lot of times, especially with the cold plunges, where I'm just like, man, I don't want to do this. Shit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it, and then it's after the fact where I feel so much more satisfied. And
Absolutely.
so like I have daily routines that I go through, and it's every single day I will run, and then usually before or after the run I will cold plunge. So those are just two things that are just like a daily routine, and that's on top of also, training, 1 to 3 times a day, and also working. So like I'm very busy, but I always make time no matter how busy I am. It's like I have had a lot of nights where I'll get home at like 9 o'clock after a jam-packed day where I haven't even had time to like think, and I still haven't ran at that point. And I feel like a lot of people at that point, they'll just call it a day, like,
Yeah.
what else do I got to do? I've already done a lot. For me, I still get my work in. I don't allow those thoughts of like, oh, let's just like chill out, let's not. We'll do it tomorrow, Not me. I make sure that regardless of the day, I get those daily routines done, regardless of how the day goes. So I think that really helps with my mental strength as I go into, MMA, but then also life in general and the way I handle things.
110%. 110%. It's small tough wins, small tough wins that build that resilience. And I also think like what right now, have you heard of like 75 hard?
Yep.
A lot of people, and sometimes like hey, people need that. But I'm like, you really just need a consistent 90. Like you don't need a hard 75. You really just need a consistent 90, and that like stays between. That's all you need,
Yep. Consistency is definitely key, and that like just ties into discipline, and that's like why my discipline is so high, is because I do those things that I don't want to do regardless. And discipline is a huge thing for me, and I can definitely thank my wrestling days for that. It really helped to make me the person I am today. And then that discipline, like I said, ties into everything in life, not just mixed martial arts.
I mean, wholeheartedly. I used to have a football coach that would say, "Sports doesn't build character; it reveals it." And I think about another quote from the late 2000s. It's like it's not on you; it's in you. As far as like just ingrained in that ability.
Yeah, I really like how like David Goggins, for example. I like the way he puts it. Andrew Huberman also. Like I listen to a lot of podcasts, so like their podcast in particular, when those two talked, that really like solidified my thought process when it comes to like how I go about my daily routines and making sure that I get what needs to get done.
The most important of the important. It's the things that really matter a bit.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
yeah, yeah. All right. So we talked about not talked about this. We talked about your opponent. We talked about the preparation going to this fight. Now let's touch on your opponent. You're familiar with your opponent. I am as well. Tony's been on the scene because I was on the scene in Ohio. I think he had his first fight in '09. Um, I've heard there's been some chatter. There's been a little bit of beef. I'd like to hear your side of the situation. You guys, I know in some element trained together. Tony is no longer with that camp and with your team overall, but I'll give you the floor to kind of just speak about this fight and the friction leading up to it.
Yeah, so, and a lot of people I'm sure would love to hear about this, so I'm excited to finally get the opportunity to explain this. Tony and I had known of Tony for a while too, obviously, like right as soon as I got into the game because I was training with Derek Tranchito, who used to be his coach. He used to be his cornerman, his mid coach, just Derek did a lot of things for Tony. So leading to it was actually November of 2022. Tony had actually asked me specifically while I was training in his camp with him, sometimes one-on-one, sometimes with other guys, but like I was spending a lot of time with him and I got to like see his camp firsthand and like just get that experience. And even though like just being there in the actual like with him in the camp, I just like watching him go about it, I was like, I feel like this isn't the right way to go about it, but whatever works for you,
So
man.
just the process didn't fit for you.
Yeah, yeah. So he actually asked me during that time to corner him. So that led me out to Rhode Island. It was a CES card where I cornered him alongside Derek Tranchito. And he ended up losing that fight. I think it was in like the second round. He got, pretty much out wrestled and then subbed, I believe. I think it was. Can't remember specifically, but it was right after that loss is where he decided to just completely abandon training with Derek in general. And Derek and him had a pretty close relationship. So like I don't know how Derek really felt about it, but for me, like loyalty is a really big thing. And for somebody who, probably wasn't asking for anything from Antonio and giving him all of his time to help him any way he can, that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way that he just up and left and decided to go and find new coaches. And he thought that that might have been the better route. But in reality, I just think that it was really his fault that that fight was the outcome that it was. I just don't think he was training and taking the right, precaution to win. So that kind of started rubbing me the wrong way about him. It was also at the time I was even helping him out a little bit too. And he just completely cut off contact. And around that time is when I was that was my 5th amateur fight, so I just only had a couple more fights to go. But I started having this thought in my head, like, it'd be kind of interesting if I made my debut against Antonio Castillo,
You wanted to debut against him?
Yeah, I did, which was probably not the brightest idea at the time, but like I felt confident in myself and I felt that I could make it happen. But reality is that they won't allow a fight like that to happen right off the rip. So I had to go another route. And I actually, in my debut, I still fought a guy that had 9 professional fights under his belt. So I still had some experience that I went up against and was able to sub him in the first round. But yeah, so it was always a thought in the back of my head. I even had verbally said it. It was something that was like kind of talked about with a couple other people that I was around too. They thought it'd be an interesting fight to have. And you know, it would have been really ironic for me too, because his wife, Nicole, which I'm sure you know, she
Hmm.
was my matchmaker throughout all of my career, you know, so she was the one that was helping me find
Yeah.
fights, and just we were close, you know. Nicole and I were, at least.
Hmm. Hmm.
Antonio, not so much. So,
Understood.
you know, I took my first pro fight, won that, won my second pro fight,
Hmm.
my third, which was my last one. Obviously, you know the outcome.
Hmm.
Very tough opponent. So it was after that one where I had to go back to the drawing boards and start to reevaluate my game.
Hmm.
And I was keeping my head down, training hard, still never stopped training hard really, and just waiting for the next opportunity to come around. It was funny because this is at the time when I'm training at Apex pretty regularly now, and Brian actually had proposed to me this idea. Brian Clark, the owner of Apex, I should say, had proposed to me this idea of taking a fight with Antonio Castillo for Cage Thunder.
Hmm.
And as soon as I heard that, it was just like, hell yeah, this is what I've been waiting for. This is like, I didn't really think it was going to happen at the time. I was actually, I felt like that was just kind of like a pipe dream, and it came to life. And it's kind of cool to me too, because like this has happened to me twice now where I've talked about a specific opponent that I've wanted to fight and like verbally said it over and over and over again,
Hmm.
and then it actually came to life. So that was the same thing for my last opponent, which was Abasov. So yeah, your mind and manifestation, I would say, is a real thing. Very real.
I 100% believe in that. I 100% believe in that. Yeah, 100%. People, there's an energy, it's a frequency of vibration. That's all you're thinking about, and so you're putting the steps and actions and energy towards it. It shows up. You know.
Yep.
Oh man. So what I wrote down on this thing, I was like, it sounds personal. And the fact of this is martial arts. There's a certain this is the fight business, and the fight business is the fight business. It can be a dirty game, but you strike me as a martial artist. You know that's how you. That's what you are. You know what I mean? Some people say they're fighters, some people say they're martial artists. There can be there's duality there, but I think you embody a martial artist persona. And so, as you, if we were in a kung fu movie, I feel like you'd be clenching a fist and be like, "He disrespected teacher,"
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
That's where it
Not
seems like
only,
it's
sorry, not, I didn't mean to cut you off, but he didn't only
good.
disrespect the teacher, but he disrespected me personally as well. So it's
Okay,
going both ways now. It's like he just dug himself a pretty deep hole. Now he's gonna have to deal with the consequences.
all right, all right. It's going to be interesting to put this out. Put this out. You know, I have his. I have. I've asked him similar questions. You know, I'll send you. You'll see the content when everybody else sees it. You know.
Oh yeah, I will.
Um. Yeah. All right. Um, tell me a little bit about some people that you help support you, that champion you, that you also champion your support crew, friends, family, sponsors, and that type of stuff.
So, first off, I would definitely like to just mention the people closest to me, which would be my family. You know, my
Mhm.
mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, my grandma. You know, both actually my
Mhm.
grandma on my mom's side, then my grandparents on my father's side. They've all been very extremely supportive. They've came to every single one of my fights, win or lose. They're always there for me,
Mhm.
and you know, I love them for that. And I know it for them, it's definitely a hard thing to watch. Maybe my
Mhm.
brother not so much. My brother loves fighting, so like he's here for it. But like my mom
Mhm.
more so, like it could be hard for her at times. But
Yeah.
she still decides to be there regardless. Outside of that, my girlfriend definitely, she is very supportive of everything that I do, and she understands that she has to kind of deal with me a little bit, especially when it gets closer to the fight and I'm cutting weight, and I can't thank her enough for just kind of allowing me to be a little just short-tempered, just for usually only about like 2 weeks at a time, and I've been getting better with it, so I appreciate the hell out of her for that. My coaches, so all of my coaches are extremely supportive. Shannon, who I've already mentioned, is Shannon's like an older brother to me, really. He's a couple more years older than me, and he's such a great mind and a great guy in general, which I know you know. And I can't thank him enough for his knowledge that he has shared with me. And it's every day I'm in the gym and I get to roll with Shannon. It's like I love that, because for me it's like, how am I gonna get him today? You know, I'm always like playing that game of, all right, I gotta get Shannon somehow. I gotta figure it out. And because of that, it really pushes me to continue to learn and excel my game. And I will say the same about Derek as well. So Derek does a ton for me, man. Derek does a ton for all of his fighters. Anyone that fights under Derek, he is there for you wholeheartedly.
Awesome.
Like, he will bend backwards, travel, and make sure that you are fully prepared to go into that cage. And his knowledge and the way that we can just like, you know, we're not just like, he's not just my coach, he's my friend. Same with Shannon. And then on top of that, Brian Clark as well. Brian Clark and I have had, and Brian is, like I've mentioned, he's the owner of Apex. We've had a very it was like a kind of close relationship at the start, but now it just like continues to get even closer and closer. And I really am trying to help him make sure that Apex in general not only succeeds, but becomes one of the, if not the best MMA gym within the area. And like our direct competition would be Strong Style, actually. So like, it's like, hopefully, I wouldn't even say hopefully, but I know in due time, with the right people, we're going to reach a level to where people can't deny that Apex is a premier gym within the, I would say, Akron area, but not even just Akron. I would say all of Northeast Ohio. Then,
well, I think if you're that, then it's the Midwest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then the Midwest as well. You're right, because like anywhere in the North, like athletes out of Northeast Ohio specifically, usually, and especially in the MMA world, they were already pretty high level wrestlers.
Yeah.
So, you know, we tend to excel when it comes to mixed martial arts because of that. I think wrestling is like one of the absolute best bases that you could have. And yeah, I mean, we really have an opportunity to become a powerhouse of the Midwest.
Yeah,
So
man. I think you got to shoot for that. And I think competition is good. It's great. You know what I mean? Like, it's funny. I was talking to, when I was back in town, I was talking to owner Strong Style, my former head coach, Marcus Marinelli, and he was talking about the shoot fighting days when that was like the scene. And one of their instructors at Strong Style was a guy he fought against, like he's coached against like 3 or 4 times. It was from like a rival gym. And again, going back to the idea of like the Kung Fu movies, like you need that. You need to have, guys you respect, shake the hand, see you at the next battle.
Yeah. So reaching out past my coaches and my family, all of my teammates, whether it's True Art, Powers Martial Arts, or whoever trains with Derek. And I also want to mention with Powers, Ed Powers, the owner of Powers Martial Arts.
Hmm.
You know, I can't thank him enough as well for allowing me and Derek to use his space even when they are running classes. He will allow us to get our work in off to the side and just provide a space for us, which is really cool. But you know, my teammates actually specifically up in Powers, I see them 3 to 4 days out of the week, and those would be guys consisting of like Nate Vasquez and Christian Marinozzi, Mike Gibson, Brandon Hall. I mean, there's just a lot of guys there that are all very like-minded and driven to just get better. And that's such a great thing to have in the gym because then it becomes very everyone is able to push each other. You know, there's that drive factor that allows people to really push themselves to the highest level they possibly can get, which is really cool. And the same thing with True Art, you know, like every single one of those teammates there, they are some of the best grapplers in the state. So, and if not the state, the entire Midwest. I mean, we travel out to Chicago or, you know, down to Tennessee, Atlanta, and it really anywhere where the IBJJF is traveling,
Hmm.
we'll be able to travel to those specific cities and dominate. And we have guys that go out to Worlds and have won Worlds, like Ben Cena. And yeah, another guy at True Art that I should mention notably is Jeff Pelton. And Jeff Pelton has really, really been a massive help for me when it comes to, I would say, not only wrestling, but also grappling and then MMA mindset and MMA knowledge in general.
Hmm.
And I train with him even on my own time and his own time, even at his house. So like, he's awesome for doing that. Um, Over at Apex, we got Branson Price over there, who's also fighting on this card. KO Butler, uh, Jack Shaw. You know, there's all three of them are very, very not only great minds to be around, but also very good athletes. And
Hmm.
like when it comes to Apex, the every Sunday is sparring there, and
Okay.
the rounds that I get there are hands down some of the best rounds that I get out of any spot that I've gone to here in the Midwest.
Hmm.
And I've gone to a ton of gyms around the area. Upgrade as well back in the day. They also that's like the closest comparison I could put out
Hmm.
there. But yeah, those guys all they really love to push each other. So it's like all three of the gyms that I go to, everyone is just trying to push each other.
Yeah.
And it's awesome to be around.
Great, bro.
Um,
The energy.
yeah. I have a, you know, very, very supportive group of friends as well that majority of them, if they can't make it to the fights, they'll at least get the pay-per-view, you know. I get it. Like I don't expect you to be at every single fight, but they still want to support me. I even have friends that will straight up buy tickets just to support me, but they won't even go just because they
Hmm.
can't. But they just want to support me somehow. So that's pretty cool. My managers have also really helped me a lot, especially going into like my beginning of my MMA or professional career, finding sponsors. And my managers are Jeremy Hershkovich and Vito Morgan. And the cool thing
Hmm.
about both those guys is that I actually train with both those guys as well. They are both students of the martial arts, and they have been really good training partners for me. Vito more so. Jeremy's a little on the older side, so he tries to hang, and
Hmm.
I give him respect for that for sure. Vito can brawl, and Vito is actually fighting too, so it's cool to have a guy like that on more of like the business side of like everything that I do, and just
Hmm.
he's really good with talking to people, which for me like I could talk to people, I could have conversations with people, but when it comes to business, I just like I'm good at it, but like some people
Yeah.
are better at it, and I could see that, and I could respect that, and I'll let them do their thing while I do my thing and focus on fighting.
Right on. Yeah,
So
makes sense.
that sponsors that I would like to notably mention that have been very supportive of me and helped me, especially during the time when I first initially turned pro. I wasn't working, so like money was very tight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they were able to financially support me through those times. So that would be Apollo Supply, Waking Sun, which they actually were my very first sponsor. And Waking Sun, they actually have came to quite a few of my fights, even though they live 3 hours away. So
Okay.
like that was pretty cool for them to be that committed to seeing me fight. And then every time they would come to a fight, would bring me some merch. They also made me a banner, which was really cool. And just kind of playing that role. And also the fight shorts too. The fight shorts that I've had for my past two fights were made by the Waking Sun reps, which was cool.
They're wrap company printers.
They can screen print. They're not a screen printing company exactly, but they have so they're a hemp clothing company.
Okay.
So and for me, like like I smoke weed, a lot of
Yeah.
fighters
Oh,
do.
good. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. It's
like
allowed. You're good. It's legal. You're straight.
exactly. So like when it comes to like fighting, I cut it out, but like outside of fighting, that's like something that really helps me with my recovery. Topicals are great. I recommend that to many people, and if they can't use THC, then CBD is the next best option. But I thought it was pretty cool to have them as my first sponsor when they were a hemp clothing company.
Cool.
So just to be kind of deriving off of that, something that sat well with like my character.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Bullseye Printing. Bullseye Printing is the first sponsor that I had that actually helped me put together my fight merch. So they're actually the screen printing company
Okay.
that I went with to do my first ever fight merch run, which was that was pretty cool. They did a really good job on it. So shouts out to them for that.
Bro, I'm working on. I
Just
got it. I got it with more Ohio printing connections. I might have something for them.
okay. So let me just flip this over. I had some notes written out. Don't want to miss anyone here. Mike Walker. Mike Walker is he's a nutritionist actually who I got with and or not in person but have talked to over the phone. He's doing it remotely, but he wrote me out an entire diet plan and workout plan that I've been following ever since, especially closer to fights, to be able to start getting my weight down. I can't thank him enough for, the knowledge that he's shared with me. And also kind of tying into that, Eddie Sixtia, I think is the last name I'm going to say there, but let's just go with the Eddie experience. So Eddie is also another guy who's very health conscious, but also very knowledgeable in the weight room. And he has really helped me to start to fine tune and really take my muscles to another level. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
like building muscle necessarily, but it's taking the muscles that I already have and just strengthening them to the maximum strength that they can get to. So
Mm-hmm.
I can't thank him enough for that. Um, Whitey's Booze and Burgers. Whitey's Booze and Burgers is that's my home right there. So my father is the manager of that spot. That's where I grew up, and everyone in there knows my name. Everyone in there knows what I do, and they all support me. They all really look forward to my fights, and you know that's that's something that I'm forever grateful for. Having all of those local people from my area where I'm from, which is Richfield, Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
have them all behind my back is really cool. And that's why, like, that's part of like my drive that you had mentioned, or not mentioned, but in the itinerary write out that you had, like, my drive is my family, my teammates, my coaches, but then also my hometown, people that have known me for my whole life and have watched me grow up. It's really cool for them to see the position that I'm in now. And I'm sure a lot of them did not expect me to be where I am today. A lot of them probably thought I was going to be a complete failure, especially, after what happened as soon as I turned 18. So I was able to turn my life around, and I could see how proud some of those people are, it's cool.
It's beautiful.
And yeah. On top of that, one other guy that's really helped me kind of start to get my reach out there has been my videographer, Tyler. Goes by an artist name of Angelic. That's spelled with an X. But so if anyone who's watching this wants to go check out my Instagram page and go check out my reels, he's the guy that puts together all of those action-packed reels that have really helped me get my name out there a bit. And, I can't thank him enough for all the work that he's done. So,
good list, bro.
Yeah, I think on top of that, if I were to mention anyone else, it would be like people from the start, even before MMA, which would be like my old wrestling coaches, Dan Mosier and Ted Lockmiller. They're the ones that really instilled that discipline in me from the start that I still carry to this day. So I hope those guys watch this podcast, and if you are, thank you. It's like when you're young, you don't realize how much role models like those guys have an effect on you. And now that I'm a bit older and can look back, I'm very thankful for just the person that they helped mold into me, yeah. Pretty cool.
I appreciate it. Man, you did a good job of sharing, speaking to your community. I really enjoyed learning a bit about you. And yeah, thanks for the time. I'll be we'll be getting this I don't know the exact rollout date, but I'll let you know all that. I'll send you a folder through this app called Frame.io that'll have some edited things. And some things you can just post on your own, some things we'll look to collab on. But I'll send you some edited content with like some micro reels of this as subtitles. I'll give you a little context of like what we said or shared, but they'll be 15 to 90 seconds. You can just go through them.
Yeah, and let me mention too, thank you for doing what you're doing, because like, I've had other podcasts where like they've done it like in a way where it like allows me to talk a little bit, but not like the way that you have. So thank you for allowing me to have this platform right now, and also having some structure to like the way that you're going to put this out there to the world. I thought it was pretty cool when you sent me that whole itinerary. I was even going over it with my teammates and my coach and my girl too, even just talking about how excited I was to just have this conversation with you and finally get a chance to kind of explain to people who I am, because a lot of people, they know that I fight, but they don't really know where exactly I come from and what I've been through in my life, So
yeah,
thank you.
We all got stories. You're very welcome, man. I appreciate that. I believe my purpose is to energize my community into abundance and raise my community's collective consciousness. And I think this is a part of that in some way, shape, or form. And yeah, man, I appreciate it. I'll definitely reach out when I'm in town as well.
Yeah, definitely, dude. Definitely come over to True Art. Come roll with me, man. I'll roll with you anytime.
It's gonna be fight week. I ain't doing that, man.
not fight week. But if you're just traveling into Akron, come on by. Come say what's up to Shannon. I'm sure he would love it. Doors always open.
I appreciate it. I'll probably get there and see what your week's like and try to pop in one of your sessions.
Yeah, definitely. And I was gonna say too, when you found your purpose, that's a really cool thing. Like when you find your purpose in life, everything else becomes easier. And I wholeheartedly feel that I've found my purpose where I am now. And that is not only to fight, but to motivate, to show people that, you know, your mind is much stronger than you believe it is, and that when you put your mind to something, you can make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, believe in yourself, you know, believe in how powerful your mind is. Don't doubt yourself. If you have a passion towards something, go after it. You know, it's like, what's holding you back besides yourself?
Well said. Very well said. Yeah. Thank you. I
Of
appreciate
course.
it, man. And yeah, I appreciate the experience.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Appreciate you. I'm gonna turn this record off and yeah, man. Yeah. Man, thanks for the time. Well done.
Thank
Like I
you.
said,
I appreciate it.
I'll start turning this around. Um